Good morning. I am King Xerxes the First, and around about 486 BC I became the ruler of the Persian Empire and known as the King of Kings. I thoroughly deserved this because my dad was Darius the Great and my uncle was Cyrus the Great, who had actually started the whole Persian Empire. And at the time we're talking about, this was the biggest empire in the known world. We ruled over 127 kingdoms all the way from India to Africa. And as the King of Kings and the ruler, I was used to having everything I asked for being done. But obviously I needed lots of advisors because of all of those kingdoms trying to keep up with what was going on. My uncle Cyrus the Great had taken over from the Babylonians, and we were keeping Babylon, or near to what you call Baghdad now, as our administrative capital. But the real stuff happened in Susa, where I lived in the palace. At the time I became Persian King of Kings, I was about 36 years old. And obviously, as the king in those days, you got to have the choice of all the wonderful women, and you could choose your queen. Well, my queen was Vashti, but I had a big celebration for all the princes and rulers of those kingdoms that I was King of Kings over, and she disobeyed me and wouldn't come to show her beauty at the banquet. So she was expelled, never to be brought back into my sight ever again. Otherwise, all the women over all the kingdoms would have been disobedient to their husbands as well. So we then needed to find another queen for me. And after much searching, many of the most beautiful ladies all across the kingdoms were brought before me. And I chose the one I found to be the most beautiful, and that was Esther. Esther was the adopted daughter of a Jew, Mordecai, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that she was a Jew or about her people. So, shortly after, there was an attempt on my life by a couple of officers, and Mordecai, who was working at the gates, foiled that. But I didn't actually reward him at the time. I did, however, reward an Agagite called Haman, and I made him my number one, my main officer. Your day you might call him a prime minister or something like that. But obviously he was still under me, but he was in charge of so many things. And one of the things he brought to my attention was that there were some peoples who were disobeying all of my laws. And he suggested that we should have to have them all destroyed. And obviously, if they were disobeying all of my laws, then that had to be done. Strangely enough, Haman was really keen for this to happen. He even offered to pay for it, which we didn't need because as the king, I want to be in charge of all of these things. I didn't think much more of it, but shortly afterwards, Esther appeared in front of me whilst I was on my throne in all her royal robes. Now, that was very, very strange because nobody could step up in front of me without me actually asking them to. But Esther was very beautiful, and I did offer my gold scepter to her and asked her to tell me whatever she wanted. Strangely enough, all she wanted at that time was actually to have a banquet in my honour and have a man come along as well. So she set off to set about preparing that banquet. Now, I couldn't sleep very well, so I got the Chronicles, which is a record of my whole reign, and started reading through them. And with some of my advisors, I then found that actually it was Mordecai the Jew who had saved me those years before. And I asked what reward and honour he had had, and he hadn't had any at all. Well, we had to do something about that. So I called Haman to come as my number one advisor to advise me what I should do for somebody who had been so good to the crown and really needed honouring by the King of Kings. He was really pleased to come up with a great suggestion, and he said that person should wear some of my robes and ride my horse all the way through the city and be paraded for everybody to see and to cheer. I thought that was a great idea. So I told him to go and get Mordecai and do this honour for him. Haman was really upset. I was surprised. I mean, it was his idea and I thought it was a great idea. Anyway, he left the presents, and the next thing we knew, we were on to the banquet that Queen Esther had arranged for us. Now, at the banquet, I asked a number of times what it was she wanted, and I'd give her whatever she wanted, even up to half my kingdom. Being my queen, she shouldn't really need that, but that was offered. Well, on about the second day, and we had had a lot of very good wine and a lot of lovely food, Esther came before me again. And this time when I asked her, she asked me for mercy on her and all her people, who were going to be put to death and annihilated, not just sold into slavery. Well, obviously I was very surprised. How could anybody do that to you and your people? Whoever was responsible for that should be punished straight away. I asked Esther who had done such a thing, and you can imagine my shock when she told me it was my #1 advisor, Haman. What a terrible thing! I was furious, so I left the hall for that moment to think what I could do. And when I came back, I found Haman molesting Esther. Oh, my fury turned into even greater rage, and I ordered him to be put to death. And I'd actually been told that he had been planning to hang Mordecai, who had saved my life, on a great big 75-foot gallows. So I thought it was fitting that he himself, Haman, should be hanged on the self-same gallows. And once that was done, not only did I spare Mordecai's life, but gave him, via Esther, all of Haman's estates. And Esther had one more request, which was actually that not just Mordecai herself be spared, but the whole Jewish people. And of course I agreed to this and gave a new order, because the first one was given because of the lies of Haman. And so Esther stayed as my queen. Thank you.